Welcome back. I am John P. Today we are going to be talking about Andrew Tate's watch collection. Now, who is Andrew Tate? If you don't follow social media or perhaps you don't go on the internet a lot, this person is a retired fighter for the most part. They're young, I believe they're 35 at the launch of this video, and they post a lot to social media, and recently they have been receiving a lot of accolades in terms of how successful they have become in reaching so many people in such a short amount of time. At the posting of this video, they've amassed over 4 million Instagram followers in, I believe, a handful of months. And it seems like every corner of YouTube, Instagram, and other places on social, people are quoting him and all different types of tags in terms of the type of content he's putting out. Now, it does seem like some of it may be controversial, so I'm not going to be touching too much on the type of content that he does produce, but regardless, seemingly he's driving supercars, and a lot of things in terms of luxury come with him and his lifestyle, and I've noticed he has more than a handful of luxury watches, so I'm going to be talking about what those luxury watches are, as well as some pricing, and at the end of this video, I'm going to be giving a bit of a critique as well as some suggestions on where I think he should take his collection based on what I see that he does have. Now, there may be other watches in his collection, but this is what I saw available online. But before we do that, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com, where we buy, sell, and trade. And on the wrist today, Rolex 1016 Frogfoot dial from 1972. So the first watch that I have seen Andrew Tate wearing is actually a pretty great watch, and this is going to be a Rolex Datejust 41, known as the Wimbledon on a Jubilee bracelet. Now, this watch, in my opinion, is probably the most classic and certainly the most understated comparatively to the rest of his collection. Seemingly has a bit of a flashy lifestyle, and while many would consider this watch to be flashy, I think we're going to foreshadow where the list is going to go here in terms of the watch selection. But this watch has actually become pretty desirable over the last handful of years. It's pulled back in recent months with the pullback in the Rolex market, maybe about 20%, but these watches do trade at about $15,000 with a retail of 10, and I do think that this dial combination is just so interesting, unique. That green Roman numeral on that rhodium dial, it's just an awesome colorway, and of course it is that classic and quality Rolex Datejust 41. What do you think? Rolex Datejust 41 Wimbledon dial. Now, rolling on to a watch that's a little more showy and probably more appropriate for the type of, or at least the part of the world where he is located. This is going to be a Ulysse Nardin Maxi Marine Diver, or the Marine Diver in gold on rubber. Now, this watch and the brand UN in general, it's very popular in parts of Eastern Europe, that region, kind of the Slavic region of the world. UN just holds so much weight. They invest a lot of advertising there when Kering Group owned the brand, and it's just become a very iconic watch in that part of the world. I have a lot of friends from that kind of area. It seems like Andrew is seemingly living in Romania, so it's in that region. But I have a lot of friends specifically from that part of the world here in South Florida, relocated, and UN to them is just such a popular luxury brand. So I really get it. It fits the build. This particular version of the watch is hefty and hunky and really has a lot of gold. We had an older style of this in stock a couple of years ago at Delray Watch, and it's just such a heavy watch. It's flashy, but it's on the rubber, so it's sporty. I get it for kind of that casual, luxury lifestyle. It makes a lot of sense. This being said, this watch does take a huge depreciation hit immediately. Retails for about $31,000, but if you can find one trading, pick one up, maybe $15,000, and it's also a slow mover in my opinion. Precious metal UN doesn't seem to do too well. You're paying for a lot of gold, and of course that branding that really only holds weight for the most part in certain parts of the world. Now, next is a Jacob & Co. watch. Jacob & Co. watches have become so popular on influencers and celebrities in the recent few years. Now, some of the Jacob & Co. watches are incredibly not only fascinating, but high-end, right? Jacob & Co. will have contracts or have certain watches made for them that have these complications, like the complication we see here, the Bugatti Tourbillon, where, for example, in this watch, it has a complication where the pistons of something like a Bugatti supercar engine are moving, and you can see the inner workings of that engine mechanics in the watch, and it really is a marvel to look at. Jacob & Co. also has had different things like oil rigs and other things like moving spiders, more architecture and sculptures under the glass or the sapphire of the watch. Now, this type of watch comes at a very hefty price tag of between $300,000 to $450,000 US dollars. It depends where you bought it, if you could get one in your hands or if you had to reach out. But generally, these watches seem to be on the wrists of celebrities, so I'm sure some deals are being brokered because it does take a very special person to buy this type of watch, knowing that the market for it is really unknown and it's really unpredictable, seeing where it would go. Now, if you hang on with me till the end of this video, I'll share with you two watches in this price point where I think it makes a lot more sense for something like that to be in a collection. But this is just very cool. So I guess if you liked it and the money doesn't mean much comparatively to potentially a net worth, this could be kind of just a cool toy for someone to have. Now, next we have a watch that is very much in the same vein of what we're seeing here. Larger watches, sportier, yet kind of a flashy style. This is going to be an Ublo Classic Fusion chronograph in ceramic and rose gold, probably the 45. Now, this watch at one point was a classic. 5, 6, 7 years ago, before RM became that kind of celebrity watch, Ublo was the celebrity watch. A lot have moved on to other brands, but Ublo was the watch. Now, this particular watch has come a long way since the entirely undecorated movements of Ublo yesteryear. It's actually pretty decent. We had one through the doors, which we wholesaled at Delray Watch, and I was very impressed with how light the watch was for the size of the watch. Now, there is a lot to be lacking in terms of the decoration on the movement, but this is not that type of watch. This is a sporty watch where you really don't need the decoration. It's Ublo, and once again, this is a brand much like the UN that does hold a lot of notability and notoriety in places in the world like Eastern Europe, parts of Europe, certain parts of Asia, as well as South America. Ublo has spent a lot of time, energy, and money building out those markets, so I get it. If that's the kind of lifestyle that is being portrayed, or you're living there, kind of want to show or signal luxury goods in a certain place, this is going to be a notable brand in certain parts of the world, so I get it. Now, pricing on this, the retail is about 16,000 US dollars, but they do drop once again, like some of the others in this list. 11,000 they trade, sometimes even lower, because the demand, at least in the United States, is really just not there compared to maybe some Rolex counterparts. Now, next we have another Ublo watch going in kind of the same theme. This is going to be really a throwback to when Ublo was at its peak in terms of popularity. This is an Ublo Big Bang Chrono, the chronograph in rose gold with a retail of 35,000 US dollars, but they do trade for about 15 out there in the market. Now, these big chunky gold Ublo chronographs were so hot. There's kind of that like tire pattern almost, or the bumped rubber strap, and that was just a style for a while. Now, these watches, once again, are more sporty, and it's for someone that's after that particular type of look, larger, chunkier, more showier watch that still has a lot of sporty characteristics, casual, but once again, it's got a chronograph, so at least it has some interesting horological value outside of maybe the luxury components in it. Enough to be said about that. I think potentially he had some other Ublo watches, but from a distance, one Ublo watch kind of looks like another, so it can be difficult to really know, considering they all look so similar at a distance. Now, this is going to take us on to a bunch of watches that I did notice him wearing. These are going to be Audemars Piguet watches, particularly the hot model or collection of the Royal Oaks. Now, the Royal Oak watches seen at a distance all appear, for the most part, to be what they call bust downs, right? This is going to be watches where they take a factory or stock watch and they modify it and they put diamonds or some types of gems into the watch. They modify it, they make it, shiny, and they make it pop. And then, maybe they do the same on the bracelets as well. Now, something that they do typically, and I see this all the time in the trade from other watch dealers, is they'll take what is known as the AP rubber-clad Royal Oak, and this has this bezel that does wear away just as it gets older and it falls apart. And so what a lot of dealers will do, or polishers or caseworkers, but there is a job title inside watches called caseworkers, but they'll actually strip the bezel, they'll take it apart, or they'll put an aftermarket bezel on this watch, and it'll take a watch that was nearly useless, that looked so destroyed because of the ruined bezel that happens on these rubber clads. They'll pop one of these aftermarket bezels on it, or they'll bling out or bust down, as they call it, the rest of the watch. And then it becomes more of a showy watch for a fraction of the price that it would actually cost to get stock manufacturer diamond or gem set Royal Oak potentially, or any other watch from a manufacturer. So it can be kind of a good deal sometimes depending where you got it. But something to keep in mind is typically bust down watches, or these iced out watches as they're sometimes called, they hold relatively little value on the market trading compared to something that's going to be stock, because it limits the amount of people that might be interested in it. It's got a very particular clientele, and some people are interested in these watches. But whenever you modify things, right, you modify a car, you do something that's totally outside the ordinary, the brands generally don't want to touch it, so you lose the warranty, you lose serviceability, you send in a bust-down watch to the manufacturer. They really don't want to put their name behind it. You lose things like water resistance, you lose things, like case construction. There's many things that they really don't want to stand behind it when they have these strict and stringent Swiss kind of standards when they put their product out there in the market. Now, these bust downs can be seen anywhere between, I think I actually just saw one today trading wholesale. I can't say these particular ones, but something comparable on a strap, $40,000, someone trying to get out of it out there on the market. But they can go all the way up to over a few $100,000, just depending on the stones, the quality, GIA certs, full bracelet, the metal, also the model. So it really is a wide range there in terms of pricing. Maybe get a great deal, maybe not get a great deal, but nonetheless, this is a style that if you like it and you want something blinged out like that, maybe getting a great deal is really not the primary concern, I would imagine. Now, what do I think here? Well, first of all, these are really showy. These are flashy watches. These are watches that are going to be signaling a certain level of status in parts of the world, especially parts of the world where credit is really not available, right? Someone can walk into a UN boutique, depending, and have a job and maybe be able to, put on a credit card, a UN watch. Maybe not this one, but certainly pre-owned, and you get the drift. But in certain parts of the world where credit's not as available, walking around with one of these things is going to mean absolutely so much, I'd imagine. Now, if this is the type of level we're looking at, and we're looking at watches that are $400,000 like the Jacob & Co. Tourbillon, I would suggest and recommend getting into something more like a Patek Philippe, or even an FP Journe, something that's going to retain value, something that is going to, get the nod from collectors and even open you up more into other brands that are going to give you the ability to buy, more exclusive and prestigious pieces that, something you really couldn't just walk in to a pre-owned dealer and buy off the shelf, right? Now, if you can get yourself like a Patek Philippe 6102R, this is going to be the Celestial. Now, this watch is phenomenal. It's complicated. It's fascinating. The dial is constructed of 3 discs, one for the background, one for the moon phase, essentially, and one that tracks these stars out there in the sky. And as it turns and as the watch functions, it tracks the moon in relation to the sky. And that's just a phenomenal complication and feat that really is unheard of for the most part in watchmaking. Of course, it's Patek Philippe, so it's made to the ultimate build standards that you would expect from a Holy Trinity brand. It's in rose gold, so it fits the theme of the rest of the collection. and it's going to be about $400,000. There seem to be some out there on the market. It's difficult to get, but that seems to be the price that it would trade at. A little bit higher than retail, but once again, this is a watch that truly is going to be just a statement piece, not only for those that are out of the know, because it says Patek Philippe on it. People have caught on with the 5711, but also in the know because of the unbelievable complication that you really would have to be a watch geek or a connoisseur to some extent to truly appreciate. What do you think, Patek Philippe Celestial? Love to see it and hear it. Comments below. Now, lastly, I would recommend an FP Journe. FP Journe is on the up and up. They're more art piece. They're more collectible, high-end horology. FP Journe, I think, is probably here to stay. And some of the watches, including older models, including complicated models like tourbillons, have become so not only desirable in a very small circle of collectors and people, but also just so coveted and appreciated for the reasons mentioned. Now, I would probably recommend the Tourbillon Souverain Regents because this watch is going to set someone back probably about $750,000 US, but there's likely to be upside in the future because they're very limited in terms of not only who can purchase them, but also who's willing to own them, who can own them, as well as the appreciation of the art behind them. Now, personally, for me, would I put this type of watch in my collection? I would probably be more geared towards something like a Rolex Newman Daytona or something more vintage. But that's just my personal taste, right? When you start getting into some of these complications, it's more about just having, hey, that's cool, look how cool this is, right? And that's kind of what I saw with the Bugatti watch from Jacob & Co. Hey, look how cool this engine is running, can be translated into a more sophisticated, hey, look how cool this tourbillon is, and look at the results from the auction houses for the FP Journe tourbillons now and in the future. Start getting into kind of watches as assets, but we're talking an entirely different playing field. So what do you guys think not only about Andrew Tate's collection here, as well as my recommendations for him? Do you have any other recommendations for him? I would love to see it and hear it in the comments below, and also any feedback on his collection. Let's try to keep it pretty clean here. It seems like, hey, maybe this could be somewhat of a polarizing person. Haven't looked totally into it, but really YOLOing here on the YouTube algo. So let's see what happens. Guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com as well as my Instagram, The Real John P. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.